We'll try to be brief, and I know we're here anxious to hear Mr. Cosby, and appreciate everybody. Can we close that back door, please? Thank you. First of all, let me congratulate Representative Morris and Senator LeBeau for their able leadership on this task force. We created this task force group back in June to work with the public experts and organizations on identifying the root causes of fatherlessness and its impact on families. The questions this panel is asking about fatherlessness in our state are the tough and sometimes uncomfortable ones. But the fact remains fatherlessness is taking its toll on too many young people and families in Connecticut. No one can legislate the ideal parent, and we do know, however, that engaged parents create the structure and the influences critical to every young person's growth. Whatever we can do to promote these environments is well worth the time and effort. And of course, tackling issues like fatherlessness can always be helped by a visit from someone who is an icon like Mr. Cosby. It certainly is an honor, sir, that you join us here at the Capitol, Dr. Cosby, and instead of sitting back and letting others speak out, something no one would blame him for, Bill Cosby has chosen to lend his distinctive voice to the issue of fatherlessness. He has been outspoken in preaching responsibility and asking the tough questions and demanding more from parents and communities. One thing is for sure, if there were more people like Bill Cosby in this world, the world would need far fewer task forces. And before we bring Dr. Cosby to the podium, I would like to introduce Representative Bruce Morris, who chairs our Fatherhood Task Force. And then following that, we'll have the other worthy and wonderful Senator Gary LeBeau, who is also the co-chair of this task force. So we hope he's a senator. So first,
time since I've been a rep,
Representative Morris, come on up.
Great, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll be just as brief as well. Certainly, first of all, I really do want to thank Speaker Amann for standing behind this task force and supplying whatever resources are necessary to help us to be successful. And in that regard, then the next thing certainly goes to Dr. Bill Cosby. The task force is certainly honored to have an educator of his stature to come and raise the level of consciousness to the issue of fatherlessness in Connecticut and assist this specific task force in giving us input that would be valuable to move our work forward. It is a travesty when we understand that nearly 50% of the children in this country go to bed in a fatherless home. So certainly it's our goal that we can do something to impact that. Government cannot do everything, but we all have a role. Government, families, communities, together. None of us can do this in isolation. The government has put up barriers in our child support enforcement and welfare policies, and we must be bold and look at these. We must look at all of our policies, and we must look at what we can do to promote responsible fatherhood. So again, in that regard, we are pleased, we are honored, again, to have Dr. Bill Cosby that can help us move forward in saying those things that may be difficult and raising the level of consciousness. Thank you, Dr. Cosby, for accepting this invitation, all the time that you have freely given to us, and the time I've had to speak with you on the phone. And with that, I will turn.
How long did we talk?
An hour and a half. An hour and a half. In reality, I expected a 15-minute conversation. Really, you can't make this stuff up. When you think about a person of Dr. Cosby's stature, you expect that, you know that he's very busy, and you expect you got to quickly get to the point. But Dr. Cosby, he spent the full time I was at home. In fact, I was supposed to be somewhere for the speaker, but he was gracious. He was to the point. He was very candid. Got to see and hear his mind. And the reality is, he is vested in this. He wants to influence this country. And I told him, this is the best place. Start here with Connecticut. And the Speaker of the House, that's right. Let's start here. This is the Constitution state. This is the Constitution state. So what better place to begin to want to influence policy, to examine our policies? See, we need to do the change. Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Well, we're all warming up. I think
We may not have the issue of fatherlessness solved, but we certainly have the heating crisis solved in this room. I'm State Senator Gary LeBeau, a Democrat from East Hartford, and I'm the Senate Chairman of the Task Force on Fatherhood. I wrote the legislation that formed this task force, and along with Representative Morris, urged Speaker Amann to appoint its members. And I thank Speaker Amann for doing so. Now, why did I do that? I was a public school teacher, mostly in East Hartford, for almost 37 years. Over the decades, I saw significant changes in my students. More alcohol and drugs, more dropouts, more violence, more teen pregnancies. I have to attribute at least some of that to the almost incredible rise in the number of single-parent families, almost always fatherless families in our society. And we've got to do something to turn this around. Forget about unwed mothers. Let's talk about what Dr. Cosby calls the problem of unwed fathers. Dr. Cosby, thank you. Dr. Cosby says a home without a father is a tragedy, and a community without fathers is a catastrophe. Let's break this vicious cycle. We've got nothing to lose and everything to gain. I want to thank Dr. Cosby for being here to give this issue the public attention it deserves. I wish we had this kind of attendance at every task force meeting. Thank you very much.
Daddy, you want to say a few words? I know that Ms. Cosby has worked with Mayor Ed Perez before, and the mayor would just like to have a few brief words.
Hombre.
Hombre. Let me thank Dr. Cosby for continuing to take an interest in Connecticut's capital city, and more importantly, on the young people and families of our city. Each time that we've called upon him, he spent an hour and a half with me too, talking about what is that we wanted to do, and it was always we. He was willing to come as long as Hartford and the other places he comes to join in the causes that he support. You know, the issue of fathers in our community is a big issue. It's a big issue here in Hartford and most of our poor cities across the state. And there's one thing that I think every adult male could do to make sure that we break the cycle that we have of fatherless homes, and it's to take responsibility. To take responsibility. You know, I use my situation as a good example. My mom raised 8 males and 1 female. And because of the work she did and the work that the community did, we think we all did well. But one thing that was always missing in my household was a male. And luckily enough, I had the Big Brothers Big Sisters program that provided that to me. And as a result of the males in my life, whether it was at church, at school, we made up a little bit of not having a father in our home. Because those males took time to work with me, I've been married 31 years. 2 children, and Eddie just had his first son, and he is being a responsible dad. And that's really what we need. We need adult males in our community to be responsible dads. And I thank all of you for taking on this challenge. We have to walk the walk instead of talk and talk. And there are plenty of things that we as males could do to make sure that the other males in our society do the right thing. Thank you, Dr. Cosby, for being with us.